There's a lion and a fox living in the same forest. The lion is stronger, bigger, louder. Every animal knows his name. When he roars, the ground shakes. When he walks, everything moves out of his way. But the fox eats every single day. And the lion, half the time, he goes hungry. Machiavelli noticed this, and he wrote about it, not as a cute little fable, but as a cold, hard observation about how the world actually works. Strength without awareness is just noise. Size without strategy is just weight. And the loudest creature in the forest is not always the one who survives the winter. The fox doesn't roar. The fox watches. Now forget the animals. Look around you, right now, in your own life. Think about the person in your circle who always seems to land on their feet. Things go wrong. They recover. People come against them. Somehow those people end up worse off. Opportunities appear. They're already positioned to take them. You can never fully read them. You can never predict their next move. They never seem rattled. They never seem lost. You probably respect that person. You might even be a little unsettled by them. Here's what I want you to understand. That person is not lucky. That person is not naturally gifted with some rare talent you don't have. That person learned something specific, something that most people walk past their entire lives without ever picking up. They learned how to see without being seen. They learned that the less you show, the more power you hold. Here's the problem with most people. The second something happens, good or bad, it's on their face. The second they want something, they announce it. The second someone challenges them, they react. The second they have a plan, they share it. They move through life completely transparent, wide open, every thought visible, every emotion on display, every next move already telegraphed to anyone paying attention. And there are always people paying attention. That's the part nobody warns you about. While you're busy talking, someone is busy listening. And not because they care about you, because information is currency. And every time you open your mouth without thinking, you are handing out free money to people who will spend it against you. Machiavelli called this the fatal flaw of ambitious men. Not lack of talent, not lack of drive, the inability to be still. What you're about to watch is not about becoming cold or becoming someone you're not. It's about waking up to how the game is actually played. Each lesson in this video is a mirror. Hold it up to your own life, and you will see exactly where you've been losing ground without even knowing it. Let's go deeper. Lesson 1. The death of the talker. There's a specific kind of man who walks into every situation ready to explain himself, ready to justify, ready to fill whatever silence exists with the sound of his own voice. He thinks this is confidence. He thinks talking fast, and talking often means he's in control of the room. But watch what actually happens. Every word out of his mouth is a door opening, and every open door is an invitation for the people around him to walk in, look around, and take notes. His frustrations, his insecurities, his plans, his fears, all of it coming out wrapped in sentences he thinks sound impressive. The people across from him are nodding, smiling, encouraging him to keep going, and they are collecting everything. Here's the brutal truth about talking too much. It's not a communication style, it's a leak. A slow, steady leak of everything that gives you an edge. Your next move. Your real feelings about a situation. What you want badly enough to show. What you're afraid of losing. Every single one of those things, the moment it leaves your mouth, belongs to someone else now, and you cannot take it back. The men who have held real influence throughout history, not the loud ones who got famous for a moment, but the ones who actually held power over time, They shared one visible habit. They were selective with words the way a careful man is selective with money. They didn't spend carelessly. They didn't throw words around hoping some of them landed well. They chose. They measured. They spoke when speaking served a purpose and stayed quiet when it didn't, because they understood something that the talkers never figure out. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people fill that silence themselves. They start talking to ease the tension, and when they start talking, unprompted, unguarded, trying to bridge a gap you deliberately left open, that's when the real information comes out. The quiet man in a conversation is almost always the one walking away with more than he came in with. Stop explaining yourself to people who didn't ask for an explanation. This one habit alone will change more about how people perceive you than anything else you could do. When you stop explaining, stop defending every decision, stop justifying every choice, stop filling in every blank, you do something unexpected. You force people to fill those blanks themselves. And almost always, what they imagine is more impressive than what you would have said. Mystery has weight. Transparency has none. There's also this, and pay attention here, because this part matters. The man who talks too much about what he's going to do almost never does it. That's not a coincidence. Research actually backs this up. When you verbalize a goal, your brain registers a version of the satisfaction of achieving it before you've done any actual work. The talking becomes a substitute for the doing. You get the feeling of progress without the progress itself. The man who says nothing and simply does the work, he never has to announce the result. The result announces itself. Measure your words starting today. Not just in big conversations, in small ones too. In the daily back and forth where most of your information leaks happen without you even noticing, say what needs to be said, then stop. Completely. Don't add one sentence more than necessary. That extra sentence, the one you add because the silence felt awkward, that's usually the one that costs you. Your words are your ammunition. Stop firing them into the air. Lesson 2. The Silent Mind. Close your eyes for a second and just notice what's happening in your head right now. Go ahead. Actually do it. If you're like most people, there's a lot happening in there. A running list of things you haven't done yet. A conversation you're still processing from earlier. Something someone said that's still sitting wrong. A worry about something 2 weeks from now. Maybe a background hum of restlessness that you've gotten so used to that you barely notice it anymore. That noise, that constant churning, never-ending mental noise, is costing you more than you realize. Here's what mental noise actually does to you in practice. You're sitting across from someone important. They're talking, but your mind is 3 steps ahead, already preparing your response, already deciding how you feel about what they're saying, already categorizing this person and this conversation before it's even finished. So you miss it. The slight hesitation before their answer, the specific word they chose over a different word, the thing they almost said but pulled back at the last second. All of that, the real content underneath the surface content, gone. Because your mind was somewhere else while your body was sitting there nodding. This is how men who think they're paying attention still walk away from important moments with half the picture. Now here's what changes when the mind goes quiet. Not empty, quiet. There's a difference that most people miss entirely. A quiet mind is fully directed at whatever is in front of it. It's not suppressing thoughts. It's simply not following every thought that knocks on the door. A thought comes up, you notice it, you don't chase it, you return to right now. to this person, to this room, to what's actually happening in front of you. And when you're fully there, truly, completely there, you start catching things that other people walk right past. The way someone's energy shifts when a particular subject comes up, the thing they keep circling back to without realizing it, the gap between what they're saying and how their body is saying it. None of these details are hidden. They're right there on the surface, but they're only visible to someone whose mind isn't busy running its own separate program. Think about the calmest, most perceptive person you've ever been around. Didn't they seem almost unnaturally present? Like they were actually with you in a way that most people aren't? Like nothing was pulling at their attention from a different direction? That quality, that fullness of presence, it's magnetic. People open up to it without understanding why. They feel genuinely seen, maybe for the first time in a while, and so they give more. They say more. They reveal more. And the quiet mind receives all of it. The practical work here is simple, but not easy. Every time your mind drifts to yesterday, to tomorrow, to the imaginary argument, to the background worry, you bring it back. No frustration, no judgment, just a quiet return to the present moment. You do this 10 times a day, then 20. Then it becomes the natural pull of your attention rather than the exception. This is not a meditation sales pitch. This is basic mental hygiene for anyone who wants to operate at a level above the average person who spends most of their life somewhere other than where they actually are. Be where your feet are. Because the present moment, right here, right now, is the only place where real power actually lives. Lesson 3. The discipline of focus. Watch a man who has too many directions, and you'll see a very specific kind of exhaustion on his face. Not the tired that comes from hard work. That kind of tired actually feels good at the end of the day. This is the tired that comes from spinning, from switching, from starting things and abandoning them, and starting new things and abandoning those too. He's busy every single day, and he has almost nothing to show for it. Here's what nobody tells you about focus. Real, locked-in, long-term focus. It's not just a productivity strategy. It's a form of power that compounds over time in ways that scattered effort simply cannot. Every day that you go deep on one thing, you're not just making progress on that thing. You're building a kind of understanding, a texture of knowledge and instinct that the person jumping between 10 things will never develop. Depth creates leverage, and leverage is what separates the man who works hard from the man who wins. There's a specific moment in the life of every man who eventually builds something worth building. It's the moment he gets honest with himself about what he's actually chasing versus what he's been chasing for appearances. The side thing he's doing because it sounds impressive. The goal he's pursuing because someone else told him he should want it. The direction he's moving in because it's familiar, not because it's right. That moment of honest reckoning, when he strips away everything that doesn't belong and stands in front of what actually matters to him, that's when focus becomes possible, not before. Because you cannot focus on something you don't actually care about. You can force yourself to show up. But real focus, the kind that sustains through difficulty and boredom and setbacks, only locks in when the target is genuinely yours. Now here's the part about focus that most people completely overlook. Focus is a boundary. Every time you say yes to one thing, you are saying no to 20 others. And the people who have never learned to say no, to opportunities, to requests, to distractions that feel important in the moment, they're not being generous. They're being scattered. And scattered men are easy to manipulate because they never build enough momentum in any direction to become truly independent. The focused man is harder to move, not because he's stubborn, but because he has somewhere specific to be, and a reason specific enough that small things don't pull him off course. His yes is rare, which makes it powerful. His no is clean, which makes him trustworthy. Pick one direction. Pour yourself into it completely for longer than feels comfortable, past the point where it stops being exciting, past the point where doubt creeps in, past the early plateau where most people quit and call it a sign. That's where it opens up. That's where the compound interest of sustained focus starts paying out in ways that genuinely surprise you. Everything worth having is on the other side of the patience that most people run out of. Stay, focus, build. Lesson 4. The Mask of the Strong. Let me ask you something direct. When was the last time showing exactly how you felt in the moment actually helped you? Not venting to someone you deeply trust in private. That's different. That's necessary. I mean, in the open, in a real situation with real stakes, when the fear showed on your face, or the anger came through your voice, or the desperation leaked into the way you were pushing for something. Did it help? Or did it hand the other person exactly what they needed to get the upper hand? Here's the reality that most people resist because it sounds cold. Your emotions in public are information, and information, once given, cannot be taken back. The moment someone sees that a specific thing rattles you, they own that. They will use it again, not necessarily out of cruelty, simply because people press what gives. It's instinctive. And until you understand that your visible emotional reactions are essentially a user manual you're handing out to anyone who's paying attention, you will keep getting pressed in the same spots and wondering why. The mask of the strong is not about pretending to be a robot. It's about choosing your audience. Some things, real things, hard things, the stuff that actually moves you, those deserve to be felt fully and processed honestly, but in private, with people who have earned that level of access. Not in the middle of a high-stakes moment where your reaction determines the outcome. In those moments, your face is a tool, your composure is a weapon. And the ability to stay steady when everything in you wants to react, that stillness, is what separates the man who controls a situation from the man who gets controlled by it. Picture two men receiving the same bad news in front of the same group of people. First man, his face drops. His shoulders follow. He starts explaining, justifying, reacting loudly. Everyone in the room immediately knows where he stands. They know he's shaken. They adjust their own positions accordingly. Second man takes a breath. His expression doesn't collapse. He processes it internally. He asks one calm, clear question. Then he waits. The room reads him as unshakable. And because they read him that way, they treat him that way. And that treatment affects what options become available to him moving forward. Same situation. Completely different outcomes. Because of one thing, what each man lets show on his face. Composure compounds. Every time you hold your reaction in a moment that deserved one, every time you stay calm when calm was the harder choice, you're building a reputation inside the room. Not a fake one, a real one, because you actually did it. You actually held it together. And people who've watched you hold it together consistently start to trust you in ways they can't fully articulate. They put you in difficult positions because they believe you can handle them. They back you in uncertain moments because they've seen what you look like under pressure. They follow your lead when things are unclear because your steadiness reads as certainty. The mask of the strong, worn long enough, stops being a mask. It just becomes who you are. Lesson 5. The Law of Distance. You've been too available. Not to everyone, but to people who didn't deserve it. And that availability, that openness, that genuine desire to connect and be good to people, it got used. Maybe slowly, maybe so gradually, you didn't even register it happening until you were already drained. This is not about becoming guarded forever. It's about understanding something simple and true about human nature that most people learn only after they've been hurt by it several times. Access is value, and value depreciates when it's given away freely. Think about anything in your life that you worked hard to get. You treated it differently than the things that came easily. You were more careful with it, more appreciative of it. The effort involved created the respect. People are the same way. On both sides. When someone has to earn their way into your trust, they value what they find there. They've invested something to get close to you, and that investment makes them treat the closeness differently. But when you throw the doors open immediately, when you're fully available, completely transparent, wide open from day one, there's no investment, no weight, no earned respect for what they're being given, and things with no weight are easy to put down. So here's how you actually apply this. You watch before you extend. You let time do the filtering that your feelings in the moment cannot. Because in the moment, especially early in any relationship, you're mostly seeing what someone wants you to see. The real character reveals itself over time. Under stress, when they have something to gain by being dishonest, when keeping a commitment costs them something, those moments of revealed character, that's when you decide how close someone gets. Not on day one, not because they're charming, not because the connection feels easy and natural. Easy and natural means nothing without consistency over time. Distance is not the same as coldness. A man who maintains healthy distance is not closed off. He's selective. There's a massive difference. Closed-off men push everyone away equally. Selective men draw the right people closer while keeping the wrong ones at a respectful arm's length. The selective man still laughs, still connects, still shows genuine warmth. But that warmth is reserved. It means something. And people who receive it, the ones who've earned it, they know it means something, which makes them value it in a way that changes how they treat you. Guard your inner world like it's worth protecting, because it is. Everything you're building, internally, mentally, the vision you carry for your own life, that is the most valuable thing you own. And it needs to be surrounded by people whose presence adds to it, rather than subtracts from it. Not every person who smiles at you is your ally. Not every person who says the right things is safe. Time tells, behavior tells, actions under pressure tell. Let those things speak before you open the door all the way. Distance is not distrust. Distance is discernment. And discernment will protect you from more damage than any other single habit on this list. Lesson 6. The Cold Mind. The night before one of the biggest decisions of his life, a general sat alone. He didn't pace. He didn't call anyone. He didn't drink to calm his nerves or distract himself with noise. He sat with the weight of what tomorrow meant. And he felt it. All of it. The pressure. The uncertainty, the very real possibility that he was wrong. And then deliberately he put the feeling to the side. Not away, to the side. There's a difference. And he made his decision from the clearest part of his mind. The next morning he moved, calmly, precisely, without hesitation, because the hesitation had already happened, in private, the night before, where it belonged. This is what the cold mind actually looks like. Not emotionless, sequenced. Feel first, then decide. Not simultaneously. The reason most people's decisions under pressure are poor is not because they feel things. Feeling things is fine. Feeling things is human. It's because they collapse the feeling and the deciding into the same moment. They make the call while the heat is still running the room, and hot decisions almost always need to be cleaned up later. Anger is the most expensive emotion a man can act from. Not because anger is wrong. Sometimes anger is the correct response to an incorrect situation. But anger as a decision-making state, anger as the fuel for your next move, that's where the damage comes from. Because angry decisions are almost never about the actual situation. They're about the feeling, and feelings want relief, not resolution. And those two things are rarely the same. The cold mind feels the anger, notes it, understands what it's pointing at, and then asks, separately from a different, quieter place, what the right response actually is. That gap between feeling and response is where intelligence lives. Here's a practical frame that changes everything once it clicks. Stop thinking of emotional control as suppression. Start thinking of it as sequencing. You're not cutting off the feeling. You're deciding when it gets to influence your actions. In private, on your own time, you process completely. You let it move through you without judgment. You get honest about what's really going on underneath the surface reaction. But in the moment, in front of people, in the situations that matter, you lead with your clearest mind, your most deliberate self, the version of you that isn't being run by the immediate temperature of the moment. And here's what that discipline quietly builds over time. People start noticing that you're different under pressure, not detached, present, but steady. The kind of steady that makes others feel calmer just by being near you. There's a gravitational pull to a person who doesn't spike when things get hard. People move toward that. They trust it instinctively. And in moments of chaos, which life delivers regularly without asking your permission, the person who stays coldest mentally is almost always the person who sees the most clearly, who identifies the actual problem instead of reacting to the surface of it, who finds the move that everyone else, lost in their own heat, completely missed. Train the pause, earn the clarity, move when you're cold, every time. Lesson 7. The Untouchable Man. Let's get that straight immediately. The men who carry that quality, that settled, unshakable, impossible to rattle presence, didn't come out of the womb with it. They built it through years of choosing the harder response over the easier reaction, through years of sitting with discomfort instead of running from it, through years of staying quiet when everything in them wanted to speak, staying still when everything in them wanted to move, staying grounded when the people around them were losing theirs. It's constructed, piece by piece, decision by decision, which means it's available to you. Here's what the untouchable man is actually made of, and it's not what most people expect. It's not toughness in the way movies show toughness, not the loud guy who takes a punch and laughs, not the man who announces how unbothered he is by things, because the man who has to announce his unbothered state is, by definition, bothered. Real untouchability is quieter than that. It's a man who knows himself so completely, his values, his direction, his non-negotiables, that external attempts to define him, diminish him or destabilize him simply find no surface to grip. You can't rattle a man who isn't performing. You can only rattle a man who needs the performance to be believed. Here's where most men get tripped up on this. They confuse being untouchable with not caring. They think the goal is indifference, to stop caring what happens, to stop wanting things, to detach from outcomes entirely. That's not it. And that path leads to a different kind of emptiness. The untouchable man cares deeply about his work, about the people he's chosen, about where he's going. He feels things fully, but his care doesn't make him controllable. Because his care is directed by him consciously, rather than being available for anyone around him to grab and pull. He decides what matters. He decides how much access it gets to his state. That decision, that ownership of his own internal world, is what makes him impossible to move from the outside. People will test this, understand that clearly and prepare for it. When you change, when you stop reacting the way you used to, stop being as readable as you were, stop being available in the same way, some people will push. They'll say you've changed like it's a complaint. They'll call the distance cold. They'll try the old buttons looking for the old responses. Let them. A man who has built something real internally doesn't need to defend it. He doesn't need to explain the change or justify the growth. He simply continues being what he's built. And the people who can't adjust to that version of him, that tells him exactly what he needed to know about them. Not everyone who was comfortable with the old you is safe around the new one. The destination this all points toward is not a finished product. It's a direction, a permanent orientation toward the version of yourself that operates from clarity instead of fear, from intention instead of reaction, from genuine internal strength instead of the performance of strength. Every day, in small invisible ways, you either move toward that man or away from him. There's no standing still. The lessons in this video, the mouth, the mind, the focus, the face, the circle, the coldness, the construction of self, none of them are one-time fixes. They're daily disciplines, practiced in ordinary moments, strengthened through repetition until they stop feeling like effort and start feeling like character. Build the man nobody can touch, starting with the next decision you make. 7 lessons, 1 direction. Talk with purpose, quiet your mind, lock in your focus, control what your face gives away, guard who gets close, feel deeply but decide coldly, and build steadily, quietly, without needing an audience, the version of yourself that the world cannot easily move. None of this is complicated, but simple is not the same as easy. Easy would be reacting every time something hits. Easy would be announcing your plans and waiting for applause. Easy would be letting everyone in and hoping for the best. Easy is what most people choose every day, and most people spend their lives wondering why they keep ending up in the same places. This path is different, narrower, quieter, longer. But what it builds is real, and real things last. If this video genuinely gave you something today, a shift, a new frame, a thing you're going to carry with you, then do one thing before you leave. Hit the like button right now. It tells us that this kind of content deserves to keep being made. Share this with one person who needs to hear it, not because you want to preach at them, but because some ideas are too useful to keep to yourself. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We make content built around real thinking and real growth, and what's coming next is worth being here for. The fox doesn't roar. He doesn't announce. He doesn't perform. He watches. He moves. He eats. Every day. That's the whole lesson. Everything else was just the long way of saying it. Now, go be the fox. There's a difference. And he made his decision from the clearest part of his mind. The next morning, he moved, calmly, precisely, without hesitation, because the hesitation had already happened, in private, the night before, where it belonged. This is what the cold mind actually looks like. Not emotionless, sequenced, feel first, then decide, not simultaneously. The reason most people's decisions under pressure are poor is not because they feel things. Feeling things is fine. Feeling things is human. It's because they collapse the feeling and the deciding into the same moment. They make the call while the heat is still running the room, and hot decisions almost always need to be cleaned up later. Anger is the most expensive emotion a man can act from. Not because anger is wrong. Sometimes anger is the correct response to an incorrect situation. But anger as a decision-making state, anger as the fuel for your next move, that's where the damage comes from. Because angry decisions are almost never about the actual situation. They're about the feeling, and feelings want relief, not resolution. And those two things are rarely the same. The cold mind feels the anger, notes it, understands what it's pointing at, and then asks, separately from a different, quieter place, what the right response actually is. That gap between feeling and response is where intelligence lives. Here's a practical frame that changes everything once it clicks. Stop thinking of emotional control as suppression. Start thinking of it as sequencing. You're not cutting off the feeling. You're deciding when it gets to influence your actions. In private, on your own time, you process completely. You let it move through you without judgment. You get honest about what's really going on underneath the surface reaction. But in the moment, in front of people, in the situations that matter, you lead with your clearest mind, your most deliberate self, the version of you that isn't being run by the immediate temperature of the moment. And here's what that discipline quietly builds over time. People start noticing that you're different under pressure, not detached, present, but steady. The kind of steady that makes others feel calmer just by being near you. There's a gravitational pull to a person who doesn't spike when things get hard. People move toward that. They trust it instinctively. And in moments of chaos, which life delivers regularly without asking your permission, the person who stays coldest mentally is almost always the person who sees the most clearly, who identifies the actual problem instead of reacting to the surface of it, who finds the move that everyone else, lost in their own heat, completely missed. Train the pause, earn the clarity, move when you're cold, every time. Lesson 7. The Untouchable Man. Let's get that straight immediately. The men who carry that quality, that settled, unshakable, impossible to rattle presence, didn't come out of the womb with it. They built it through years of choosing the harder response over the easier reaction, through years of sitting with discomfort instead of running from it, through years of staying quiet when everything in them wanted to speak, staying still when everything in them wanted to move, staying grounded when the people around them were losing theirs. It's constructed, piece by piece, decision by decision, which means it's available to you. Here's what the untouchable man is actually made of, and it's not what most people expect. It's not toughness in the way movies show toughness, not the loud guy who takes a punch and laughs, not the man who announces how unbothered he is by things, because the man who has to announce his unbothered state is, by definition, bothered. Real untouchability is quieter than that. It's a man who knows himself so completely, his values, his direction, his non-negotiables, that external attempts to define him, diminish him or destabilize him simply find no surface to grip. You can't rattle a man who isn't performing. You can only rattle a man who needs